You all set? Okay. Time is 7:04. I'll call to order the Torrington Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for excuse me, November 17th, 2021. Attendance is by Zoom or in person at City Hall Auditorium, room 218, 140 Main Street, Torrington, Connecticut. Instructions for Zoom are available online at www.torringtonct.org/Zoom. And there's a link to join the meeting. Phone number is 1-646-558-8656. Meeting ID 795-950-7035. Passcode is 907148. Moving on to agenda item number 2, attendance. Serving on the commission this evening remotely is Starley Arias, Diane Carroll, Jim Babinski. Serving in person this evening is Donna Greco, Greg Parasino, myself, Greg Mealy. Also in attendance is our city planner, Martin Connor. Moving on to agenda item number 3, minutes for approval.
I'll move the minute.
For 10/13/21. I have a motion from Commissioner Parasino, and I have a second from
Diane Carroll.
Diane Carroll. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
And Diane was seated.
And yeah, we're going to seat Diane this evening as a seated member.
Okay,
Diane, you'll be able to comment and vote on issues with the public hearings and subsequent actions that we're going to take. Starley, you will not be voting on one component that we'll get to. Thank you. The time is 7:06. Moving on to agenda item number 4, public hearing scheduled for 7 p.m. Wednesday, November 17th, 2021. City Hall Auditorium, room 218, 140 Main Street, Torrington, Connecticut. A proposed zone change. Applicant Alan Borghese. Location Dibble Street, assessor map 136, block 006, lot 001. Proposal change zone map to local business LB, currently zoned R10S. Serving on the commission this evening is remotely Starley Arias, Diane Carroll, Jim Babinski. In person, Greg Parasino, Donna Greco, and myself, Greg Mealy. Also in attendance is our city planner, Martin Connor. Commissioner Greco, do you have a legal notice, please?
City of Torrington Planning and Zoning Commission legal notice. The Planning and Zoning Commission has scheduled a public hearing on the following applications on Wednesday, November 17th, 2021 in the City Hall Auditorium, room 218, 140 Main Street, Torrington, Connecticut. A, proposed zone change, applicant Alan Borghese, location Dibble Street, assessor map 136, block 006, lot 001. Proposal, change zone map to local business LB, currently zoned R10s. Time of hearing 7 p.m.
Thank you, Commissioner Greco. Is the applicant in attendance? Please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, and my name is Alan Borghese. I'm an engineer. I'm also a member of the LLC, Dibble Street Associates LLC, that owns the land. And I want to chat a little bit about the history of this, if I may.
Just 1 second, Mr. Borghese. For the record, I see you have submitted the green cards for the mailings. And was there a sign posted?
Yes.
On site? Thank you, sir. Please
Thank you.
proceed.
First of all, we are the owners of the land on the corner of Dibble Street and East Main Street, which includes the land everybody knows as Wendy's, a package store, and a Valvoline. Years ago, we purchased the land adjacent to it that was a spare parking lot for one of the automobile agencies. We decided that due to the difficulty of the land, the narrowness of the land, overhead power line right of way, that in order to develop that at all, it would be wise to acquire the land of Mr. McGrath, which is these 2 parcels of land. Those 2 parcels of land, the first one, the bottom one is local business zone. This, I call it a pyramid for lack of a better word, trapezoid, I guess the right word is part of his land, and he's selling us the land. It has approximately 50 feet of frontage at the rear, and it runs in a nice triangle to make this, what we're hoping to do is make this whole piece of land local business. Some years ago, this parcel of land here, which is a red brick house, was purchased by an individual, and they changed the zone to local business. So right now, the local business zone basically looks like this. Oops, excuse me. We'd like to make this a definite figure, which is a triangle, and it's logical and also it affords a lot of things to the properties. Number one, besides it being logical from an engineering point of view, it is still buffered from the residential zones here. The closest this property line is to an adjacent home, I scaled off as 210 feet. In addition to that, when we make the zone change, there is going to be a buffer of 25 feet. So that means there's 235 feet of distance to the nearest residence. On this piece of land, there is no wetlands or any other restrictions that would keep us from developing it, except there is a major right of way from the overhead power line here, which restricts the development really to a small strip right along this area here. And that's where we're limited to what the buildings have to be. We're proposing this zone change because we do have a possible user for this piece of land that will be, I think, a benefit to the community. And we'd like to make this proposal. So I would be happy to answer any questions for you.
Any commissioners have any questions at this point?
No, I don't.
Nope.
Pretty straightforward. Marty, you have a memo, please?
Yes, I wrote a memo to the commission dated October 4th, 2021. Alan Borghese is proposing a zone change from R10S residential to LB local business zone for vacant land located on Dibble Street, Assessors Map 136, Block 006, Lot 001. Property is 36,390 square feet or 0.835 acres in size. Property is currently owned by Anthony H. and Annette M. McGrath. Both public water and sewer are available to service the property. The applicant has submitted a Class A2 survey titled Improvement Location Survey prepared for Borghese Building and Engineering Company, Inc., Dibble Street and East Main Street, Torrington, Connecticut, by Dufour Surveying LLC, dated 9/7/2021. He's also supplied a map titled Map Prepared to Show Property to be Changed from Zone R10S to Zone LB. Zoning Location Survey prepared by Borghese Building and Engineering, Inc., Dibble Street and East Main Street, Torrington, Connecticut, by Dufour Surveying LLC, dated 9/7/2021. The map conforms to the zoning map requirements of Section 8.7.1 for a proposed change in a zoning district boundary. The property is adjacent to property zone local business on both the south side property line at 1565 East Main and the east side property lines owned by Dibble Street Associates LLC and Edmondson J. Eula Chimbo at 186 Dibble Street. The Dibble Street Associates property at 220 Dibble Street is where Wendy's, The Cork, Valvoline Instant Oil Change businesses are located. Torrington Savings Bank is located across Dibble Street and is also zone local business. In reviewing the application maps submitted, I have the following comments. One, the property is more than 3 times the minimum lot size for a local business property. Clearly, this does not represent spot zoning. 2, the resulting rezoning would create a triangularly shaped LB local business zone at the corner of Dibble Street and East Main, should the zone change be approved. When next Dibble Street Associates LLC property at 220 Dibble Street was developed as a condition of approval, the owners were required to grant a 10-foot utility easement in favor of the city of Torrington. When the zone change from R10S to LB was approved for Stephen Bianchi at 186 Dibble Street on November 17, 2017, the engineering department indicated the city's right-of-way area along the road shoulder of Dibble Street, adjacent to the referenced property, is inadequate for utility and road use. A 10-foot wide strip of the parcel's land running parallel to the north property line needs to be deeded to the city of Torrington as additional right-of-way. The engineering department also requested that Mr. Bianchi grant a 10-foot sidewalk, road widening, and utility right-of-way easement in favor of the city of Torrington, which the applicant agreed to when the zone change to LB was granted. I discussed this with Assistant Public Works Director, City Engineer Paul Cunsons, PE, about the need for obtaining additional right-of-way along Dibble Street in front of this parcel. Mr. Cunsons agreed that an additional 10-foot sidewalk, road widening, and utility right-of-way easement in favor of the city of Torrington would be beneficial. I discussed the additional 10-foot easement with the applicant, Mr. Borghese, who indicated he had no problem granting the additional easement should his zone change application be approved. In my opinion, this requested zone change is a smart growth measure that allows for development in accordance with the 2019 Torrington Plan of Conservation and Development. The business development section 8.2 utilize smart growth measures states economic development efforts within the city of Torrington will be in accordance with accepted smart growth measures. These efforts include revitalizing the urban center, reusing vacant industrial buildings, remediating and redeveloping brownfield sites, and focusing on new industrial/commercial development where existing infrastructure can support the growth. These smart growth policies will maximize utilization of existing infrastructure resources while minimizing greenfield development. Other staff comments. Economic Development Director Rista Malenka verbally indicated her support for the zone change to me. The fire department had no comments. Engineering Assistant Public Works Director / City Engineer Paul Cunsons in his memo to me dated 9/14/21 stated, it is noted that the parcel in question has frontage on Dibble Street and will allow the opportunity to be combined with other abutting parcels zoned local business that front on East Main Street. Should all these parcels be combined to form a common larger parcel and or development, access should be limited to East Main Street only. Police traffic, no comments were received. Conclusion, the proposed zone change has been discussed with the mayor and city staff at the 10/4/21 land use meeting, and no objections to the proposed change were voiced. Engineering concerns regarding future driveways will be addressed as part of the site plan application approval. I believe the commission can make a finding that the proposed zone change is in accordance with the 2019 Torrington Plan of Conservation and Development. It does not represent spot zoning. The Connecticut general statutes require the commission, when making a decision on a zone change, to take into consideration the Plan of Conservation and Development prepared pursuant to CGS 8-23. I would recommend approval of the zone change with an effective date the day after the date of publication with the following condition. 1, the applicant shall grant a 10-foot right-of-way easement along the front northerly property line on Dibble Street in favor of the city of Torrington for sidewalks, utilities, or road widening. The easement area shall be shown on a recording Mylar map. The applicant's attorney shall prepare a deed for the easement area that shall be reviewed and approved by Corporation Council.
Thank you, Marty. I think one of your key components, Marty, is the comment that this doesn't constitute spot zoning. And, you know,
Right.
catching that as part of this bigger parcel, it makes real
It
sense.
does make some sense.
Do any commissioners have any comments at this point before I go to the public?
No.
No.
We've done it? No. Okay, I'll go to the public. Would anyone like to speak in favor of this application? Please come forward to state your name and address for the record. Being none, would anyone like to speak in opposition of this application? Please come forward and state your name and address for the record. Being none.
Check on Zoom.
On Zoom, does anyone want to speak in favor or opposition to this application? Being none, Mr. Borghese, do you have anything to add or sum up?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Borghese. The time is
7:20.
7:20. I declare this public hearing closed, and we will make a decision as soon as Commissioner Greco reads it.
Condition.
Read that first.
Well, no, after you do your motion,
Okay.
but make that condition.
Okay. Like to make a motion to approve proposed zone change applicant Alan Borghese, location Dibble Street, assessor map 136, block 006, lot 001. Proposal change zone map to local business, LB currently no zone R10S. The effective date of the zone change shall be the day after publication of legal notice in the local newspaper with the following condition. The applicant shall grant a 10-foot right-of-way easement along the front northerly property line on Dibble Street in favor of the city of Torrington for sidewalks, utilities, or road widening. The easement area shall be shown on a recording Mylar map. The applicant's attorney shall prepare a deed for the easement area that shall be reviewed and approved by Corporation Council.
I have a motion. I have a second, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? So moved. Good luck, Mr.
Thank
Borghese.
you for your time.
Yeah, have a good evening, sir. Moving on to agenda item number 4B. The time is 7:21. Proposed change of zoning regulations. Applicant Volta Charging LLC, care of Samuel Lee. Proposal. Proposed amendment to sections 5.15.2, 5.15.5B, and 5.15.6B. Serving on the commission this evening is remotely is Starley Arias, Diane Carroll, Jim Babinski. Serving in person is Greg Parasino, Donna Greco, and myself, Greg Mealy. Also in attendance is our city planner, Martin Connor. Is the applicant in attendance, excuse me, Commissioner Greco, do you have the legal notice, please?
I do. Planning and Zoning Commission has scheduled a public hearing on the following application on Wednesday, November 17th, 2021 in the City Hall Auditorium, room 218, 140 Main Street, Torrington, Connecticut. B, proposed zone change to Torrington zoning regulations. Applicant Volta Charging LLC, care of Samuel Lee. Proposed amendment to sections 5.15.2, 5.15.5B, and 5.15.6.B. Time of hearing immediately following the close of the first public hearing, which begins at 7.
Thank you, Commissioner Greco. Is the applicant in attendance, please?
Yes, good evening. Members of the commission, I'm Kristen Motel, member of the law firm Cuddy and Fader, representing Volta Charging tonight.
Okay, do you have green cards? Or,
This is a-
I'm sorry, I apologize.
That's
Go
okay.
ahead.
That's all right.
Busy night, go ahead.
Sorry.
Please proceed.
I'll continue. I'm joined tonight by John Stuckey, the Director of Site Development at Volta. As you're aware, Volta is proposing amendments to the sign provisions in zoning regulations to accommodate electric vehicle charging stations that have display kiosks in limited locations within the LB zoning district. Volta's charging stations provide free or subsidized charging for electric vehicles. And in order to do that, they require a display on the charging kiosks to defray the cost of free service. And before I go any further, I'm going to ask John to come up and talk a little bit about Volta and the kiosks themselves. And then I'll just briefly summarize our zoning amendments and we'll address any questions that the commissioners may have. John.
Good evening, commissioners. First and foremost, as Krista mentioned, my name is John Stuckey. I'm the Director of Site Development for the Greater New York Metro area for Volta Charging. And in that role, I liaise and discuss and try to site Volta Charging with property owners and interested in properties. So mainly retail tenants and then major landowners in the area. And a bit about my background, just because I think it's pertinent to this, newer industry and story. I started in wide world of finance, but was enamored of Tesla. So in 2013, I started working for Tesla and was there for 6 years. So I kind of got to watch EVs from their infancy and mature to where the point they are today. And then I also did a few entrepreneurial things in digital marketing, which is why Volta was so appealing to me. And with that, I wanted to give you sort of the 10,000-foot overview of Volta and why we are interesting in an emerging market. So Volta was actually founded 11 years ago, and it was founded in Hawaii of all places. And the gentleman who founded it said, I want to be in the electric vehicle space, and I think I want to be in electric vehicle charging. But he looked at a few different business models and ultimately came to the conclusion that if you're just going to reach or you're going to charge people for electricity and try to make a margin, it's going to be very difficult to impossible or near impossible to build infrastructure in lockstep and in advance of EV adoption. So he thought, is there a way we can create a bigger picture and bring more stakeholders to the table? And the idea he had was, hey, can I make this a sponsorship opportunity? So the first Volta charger was a no-name piece of equipment on the wall of a grocery store in Hawaii. And it had the picture of a local bank next to it. And I believe that local bank is still advertising and sponsoring us. Fast forward today, and we've matured quite a bit, and we have 2,040 or 50 stations in the ground nationwide, and we continue to expand nationally. And our stations to date have delivered over 100 million free electric vehicle miles. And our value proposition to property owners is a couple of points. One, the ability for, or rather, the sponsorship model allows us to go in and invest in the infrastructure ahead and in lockstep with EV adoption. So generally speaking, we're coming in and we're footing all the installation costs. And then most importantly, it allows us to run the operation side of the business and give away the electricity for free. And why do we do this, and why do we think this works, and what's the big picture? So if you look at the transition from gas-powered vehicles, potentially electric vehicles over the next 10, 20, 30 years, whatever timeline you want to look at, whether it's, a Bloomberg article, journal, et cetera. There's roughly $300 billion that is just spent on fueling, like just gas sales. But then there's an additional $200 billion that's spent on commerce at gas stations. So what Volta wants to do, and what this model allows us to do, is try to influence people to go to places where commerce is already happening, and then increase that commerce and make it more of a destination. So what we are trying to do with Stop and Shop, and we're actually trying to do throughout the Northeast with not only landowners, but also municipalities, is we want to bring in this free infrastructure and lean into the power of free to attract current EV drivers, encourage new EV drivers, and enable and attract future EV drivers. We want to keep them at businesses like Stop and Shop. And Stop and Shop and the parent company, Ahold Delhaize, is an incredibly important partner to us, and they sort of see this, and they've been the leading edge. So we have a portfolio-wide agreement with them, and we're having these conversations in a ton of towns up and down the Northeast. We started in Washington, D.C. under the Giant banner, and we're moving north all the way to Hannaford, I believe, is next on the list in the greater Boston area. So the model is really interesting because it allows us to run a sustainable business, and it allows us to invest ahead of time and create the demand and solve that chicken and egg problem. What came first, the electric vehicle charger or the electric vehicle itself? I think it's really important to highlight a few things in these sort of meetings, because this sponsorship model is a bit of a wild card. It is absolutely brilliant because it allows us to gain enough revenue to build this infrastructure, but it has to be run right. And I think that's something we should discuss. So right off the bat, we are in a very, very public place. And the people that we're speaking to with the sponsorship and this media content, it's actually not the drivers, it's everybody walking in and out of Stop and Shop. So you notice the placements are very, very near the front, the two main entrances of Stop and Shop, and that's absolutely key to our business model. We do not want to talk to drivers in right-of-ways, and we do not want to create these signs in such a way that they would be distracting. So interesting. And then of course, other interesting things is who supports us and what sort of content are actually going to run on these screens. Fairly important question, especially in this area. right off the bat, it's important to know that we are a very public network and a now public company. So we're not doing anything adult. We're not doing anything violence. We're not doing tobacco. We're not necessarily doing alcohol unless people ask for it. And there's a number of other carve outs and just blatant no-fly zones that we would never want to put in a public forum. And there's also mechanisms with each one of our partners to take down any content that might be offensive to a particular jurisdiction very quickly. I've only heard of really one story in the recent past, which was a very, very unique situation where we were advertising a magazine. There just happened to be a very controversial subject on the face of that magazine at the time, so we took it down. So we strive to be a community partner. Other things to think about with our overall business model and why it's interesting, especially in this context and for this forum, is that the overall goal is we want to start to attract and shape commerce, which I think is really important to municipality concerns. But then what I'm personally passionate about, and one of the things that drew me to Volta, is that this is a really advanced, interesting messaging tool. And it's getting a lot of attention, especially today with everybody looking at climate change and the ESG initiatives going on with a variety of businesses. And this is also something that even local business can take advantage of. And I'm proud to say that we even pioneered some of that in the Northeast. And it's not just, you know, the Unilevers of the world or the Crafts of the world or the Chevy of the world who are advertising any EV that comes out that buys sponsorship and supports the stations. We actually have started to do it with some local concerns, especially in places in New Jersey where we've actually installed with municipalities. So it's a really, really interesting and brilliant concept when you find the right fit. And grocery happens to be the right fit. And anywhere where you can find significant commerce and foot traffic is a good fit. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions and happy to discuss a number of things about the business model and the stations themselves if you would like.
You happen to have a sample of what this charging station looks like by chance, or how big the graphic component is? And does this run 24/7?
Totally. So
Please. Thank you.
So the stations themselves are about 7 feet tall and 3 feet wide. The screen, there's 2 digital screens on either side, and they're both 55 inches. So a larger TV, not really meant to be seen from distance. The advertisements and the stations themselves, it's up to the site host and the jurisdiction to tell us when is best to keep them on. I personally like to leave them on as much as possible because it gives people the optionality to use them as critical infrastructure. But oftentimes, especially in cases where you have security risk, we turn them off after the business goes off. So very common for it to be open in the case of a grocery store, maybe 7 to 10. And as far as the LED lighting and the images that you will see, auto dimming. We don't want to create light pollution. The screens themselves do not play audio. They do not play full video. The maximum amount they will change is 8 seconds. This is not meant to be a distraction.
So this is a form of advertising, basically. Quick shot of advertising. As you said, there's not a lot of content because you don't want people stuck staring at it.
No,
Right,
that's not the idea.
right. So these stands, as they're located at grocery stores, as the example that you seem to have here, the attraction isn't necessarily to gain, one grocery store versus another. So there's no exclusivity here. The whole issue is you're
No.
not really going to do much more than provide the station, a charging station that has an advertising component. And if Stop Shop wants it, you're more than willing to do it for them. Certainly if Market 32 across the street wanted it, you'd be willing to do it for them as well, correct?
To be honest and to be frank, I'd also be really interested in putting them street side in a community like Torrington. And we've
Right.
actually done that in New Jersey because
Okay.
significant commerce happens
Yeah.
in long term.
So the advertising, is that where your revenue comes from? Is the advertising?
Right now, the vast majority of our revenue is coming from the advertising. Over time, it will split between advertising, consulting, and then charging for charging. And here's why. The way to think about EV charging infrastructure and critical infrastructure. There's really two ways to think about it. There's kind of slower charging that you would have at home, where it's going to take hours to fill up a car. And then there's fast charging. Now, to date, the majority of the chargers we put in are slower chargers. They're a nice amenity. And we're strongly transitioning into putting in fast charging infrastructure now. There's actually a few projects that we have going on across the border in northern Westchester County. But as much as we'd like to be able to give away the fast charging for free, sourcing the power is so expensive, no amount of advertising would ever subsidize it. So at bare minimum, we're trying to be the cheapest and most used charging network. Right now, our sort of guiding mantra is for every dollar invested, we want to deliver the most electric vehicle miles. So yes, it's interesting because on the surface right now, it looks like we might be an advertising company with a charging problem, but we're really a charging company with an advertising problem. We're advertising enabling a bigger vision.
You mentioned consulting. What is that?
What's that?
You mentioned, you used the word consulting. What's
This
that?
is actually really, really interesting. So because we're deploying all of our own capital for this, we have to think deeply about not only where EV adoption is going to happen, but where charging is going to happen with that EV adoption. So we built a machine learning model that was initially meant to serve just us, but is now advising utility companies. And we're starting to think about how to flex this for municipalities, where we're saying, how do you think about building infrastructure 5 years in the future, 10 years in the future, 15 years in the future, as EV adoption goes from 2% to 5% to 20, et cetera, et cetera. And what's really fascinating, and something that I'm working on with at least one municipality, or working on right now with an RFP, at least in one municipality in New Jersey, is we're starting to think about how to enable EV adoption in an area where there's a lot of multifamily buildings that otherwise wouldn't have chargers. So if you put a charger on a street corner, and at what speed will that actually enable someone who doesn't have a parking spot to own an EV, and what that does for EV adoption? And we believe we at least have done the research to start to think about that. So it's a new and sort of exciting vertical for us.
With these charging stations, I see in the picture, it looks like there's one charging port, so to speak, on one side. Are they dual-sided, strictly one per pedestal, so to speak?
Yeah, to date, we've just done one per port, and I think it'll change in the future. But at the moment, that's really what the market wants, because we make it very easy for the landowners, just being
Right.
turnkey, coming in, covering the CapEx, covering the OpEx. So try to make it as easy as possible to get to yes.
So an individual with an electric vehicle pulls up to this, and
Yep.
this is a slow charging component.
So 20 to 30 miles per hour. And once it's mature, we expect it to be in use up to 8 hours a day, 5 or 6 charging sessions per port. So
Mhm.
they're impactful. The free really works.
The number of units you said over a couple thousand, you said? Is that right?
Yeah, we have a little over 2,000 installed, and then we have a backlog of 1,000, 1,500, something like that.
Have you ever been in a position where you had to deconstruct applications?
Take them
Meaning once
apart.
you had them installed, but they didn't work out?
Thankfully, no. We got close to that in one jurisdiction in New York, and it actually inspired us to get tight and employ Cuddy Fader and a number of other attorneys to make sure that we're being very upfront with this business model and understand how to make it work within the context of the community. So no, to date, we have not been, we've not had to take anything down in the New York area, nor have we been asked to withdraw an application.
Do
And
you see that as a risk when you go to start charging? I
what's
mean,
up?
Do you see the risk increasing where, right now it's free?
Yep.
All right, so now you're moving to a model where it won't be free any longer. You'll have fast charging, which is gonna cost some money.
Yep.
Because that's gonna change it's gonna change the look a little bit to the person who's gonna use it. Because right now it's free. It's pretty attractive. If you're gonna spend an hour in a grocery store, plug in, get 20 miles or 30 miles out of your charge. It's pretty free. And now when you go to the model where you're gonna charge, I mean, charging will be various amounts of money depending on the market, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
But do you see that as an increased risk in terms of potentially some of the installations not working out financially?
I actually really appreciate the dialogue and the question, because It is something we absolutely have to get right as a company because to date we are the give free charging company.
Yeah.
However, when you lived in the sort of the EV ecosystem, as long as it is fast charging and especially if it's critical infrastructure, people understand that they have to pay for it. And if I can, frankly, I'll give you an example. I worked at Tesla and I finally bought one when I took this job. And I'm driving from New Jersey. So I am going to have to charge either on the way up or the way back to make this trip. Because I didn't get one of the, $100,000, 400-mile range ones. And I had a couple different options and I had to stop and for dinner, et cetera, et cetera. And so I went to the Danbury Mall and charged my car there, and I'm being charged by Tesla. It's no more free charging for owning a Tesla. That's perfectly fine, and had dinner, and that's great. That's the perfect synthesis of what we're trying to achieve. What's fascinating though, if we do the business right, what Tesla's done to build this network is that they've taken the path of least resistance to build the infrastructure as quickly as possible. And that's great. They are the leaders in the space. They have a $1 trillion market cap, give or take. They've done a good job. These conversations and what we're trying to build and the convenience should make us the most convenient and hopefully the most loved and utilized network. Because we're going to take the time to come here and say, we're going to lean into the media model to fund the extra money that we're spending to put the stations right up front or right near to create the best experience. And interesting, EV trends and things going on. We're finally at the point where it seems like even Teslas are going to adopt the universal standard, at least with adapters. So every charging station we put in should charge every single vehicle, even the closed network Tesla as it exists now.
So you charged at the Danbury Mall.
Yep.
Where is the information of specific charging stations? I'm here, I want to go to Boston, my car's only half charged, I'm not going to make it
Great question.
all the way. What resources out there? And I guess how's that play into this? That obviously you say Stop and Shop at High Street or East Main Street is a destination now for charging.
So with every Tesla vehicle, it's built into the navigation system.
Okay.
You have to really, really try to run out of juice because it's going to lead you there.
Okay.
For the other charging networks, a lot of people are forming deals with the OEMs, especially as they build out their network. But then there are a few third-party networks. Actually, there was a big third-party network, but it was bought by a charging company, so I'm not going to call it third-party anymore. Google seems to be the leader in the space, and they're going to become, and I hope remain the leader, just simply because of their mapping and navigation. So that's the most logical place. They're going to tell you how to do that. Then there's a number of third-party tools saying, okay, this is your car, this is how far you're driving, this is where you should plan on stopping it for how long. So the information's out there.
Personally, I know this is the wave of the future. It's coming. I guess what goes in my mind is you pull up to the Danbury Mall to charge your car, and there's a car already at the station, at the charger, 2 cars waiting, and you have an appointment here for this meeting in 2 hours. What do you do?
It's tough. And that's
Right.
why we need to go build a lot of this infrastructure really quickly.
Right.
And I'm not being facetious. Like,
No,
it's what keeps me up at night.
right
Well, you could have parked at our freeway.
over here.
Over on the side of the building.
Yeah,
I should, and that's the whole
You
thing.
gotta go move your car.
All right. Granted, this is the Volta, person talking to you, but I believe in this adamantly. Because I was there in 2013 when a charging port was really a novel and new idea, I got to watch these networks evolve. And unfortunately, they didn't get a lot of utilization, so there wasn't a lot of money in them, so they weren't always well kept. But the Tesla network, by virtue of the fact that Tesla sold cars, was always up 100% of the time, or pretty close. I am incredibly proud to work for Volta because we have the ability to maintain the network with a high degree of certainty. And we wouldn't be able to do that without the sponsorship model. It's just, it wouldn't have happened.
Well, you must provide some type of guarantee for those people who are allowing you to put those kiosks. in.
Oh yeah, they're remotely monitored 24/7.
Right.
We have local people on the ground in New York that are monitoring this network. The idea is we know what's wrong before the site partner does.
Right.
So you place this in Stop and Shop's parking lot.
Mhm.
You're providing free charging. Who's paying for the usage of this charger?
We are.
So that's sub-metered
Yep.
within the unit?
Within the
Individual
unit, it varies.
Or
Stop
back
and
at
shop, I
utility
think,
source with a sub meter?
yeah, we're paying for the electricity cost. We'll put it that way. Yep. And to build this infrastructure in the Northeast, it is really expensive to source electricity for the fast charging. So this is important in figuring out alternative means of monetizing it, even beyond the incentives to install. Like, to give you an idea, just sort of EV charging 101. There's two ways you're charged for electricity. There's the demand charge, and then there's the service charge, which is basically the size of the hose and then how much water is coming out of it. And in certain jurisdictions in New York, you might average $25 to $30 per kilowatt is just your fixed cost, right? So every time something's plugged in and pulls, or every time something is plugged in monthly and pulls 1 kilowatt, you owe the power company $30. Here's the thing. Fast chargers on average will pull 100 kilowatts per unit. So what happens when you have 4 to 6 of them there? Yeah, that's, sorry. So 600 at 30, is that 18 grand? Yeah, so that's $18,000 fixed operating cost before you're even talking about reselling electricity and sourcing that water. So it's especially interesting to have this conversation in our jurisdictions where electricity is more expensive. Like, this is brilliant, and this allows us to build this critical infrastructure.
Correct me if I'm wrong. To my understanding, I cannot resell electricity for a profit. For example, I have a commercial building. I have 1 electric meter to it. I have 4 tenants in it. I have sub meters for those 4 tenants. Electric bill for the month is $1,000. For simplicity, the 4 tenants are each $250 each. That's all I can charge. I can't charge them $400. I can't charge this guy $500 and so forth.
Yep.
How does that play into your portfolio, so to speak? That because now you're actually a utility
It's interesting.
reseller, so to speak.
We are, there's been, I don't know the exact laws, but it's been carved out. So it's understood that we have to create a pricing structure on a per kilowatt basis to resell the electricity. So it's an arbitrage. It's like, what's my fixed cost versus what I'm sourcing the electricity at on a per kilowatt hour basis? And then what am I charging back to the customer on a per kilowatt hour basis? In New York off the cuff and in Connecticut, New Jersey, if you go to any fast charger, it's somewhere between 30 cents and 50 cents a kilowatt hour, depending on where you are to charge your car. If you're going to a non-Tesla, we're hoping we can drastically undercut that or undercut it as much as humanly possible. Yeah.
You know, I guess from my standpoint, you know, you have a Stop and Shop store, you know, and just for conversation, these are fast chargers.
Yes.
Well, you know, everybody's plugged in, the demand goes and it peaks here, and that's what they're being charged now for a month for their usage, you know, even though the next day, boom, you know, there's a ton of them empty.
That's why it's a really tricky business, and you're hitting the nail on the head.
Now, with these charging stations, what prohibits Mrs. Smith to pull up, plug in, and like, geez, Mary, you want to go cross town shopping? Leave the car here. I'm getting free charge. And just take off.
It's so one, most people use the stations will have the app so we can message them through the app.
Okay.
The other just kind of foolproof way is we'll put a 2-hour limit on it or whatever Stop and Shop
So it
wants.
times out, so to speak.
Yeah, it's like it may be plugged in there and that's not good form or etiquette, but you're not getting any more juice. We're trying to get you to move.
Okay, all right, well, makes sense.
The fast chargers that you're migrating over to, they're all of the current technology, so they're the fastest of the fast chargers.
They are and they aren't, because where we're focused on, we kind of think intra-urban first. So we want to be in the densely populated areas and then hopefully monetize that properly to expand. So we're starting with only 50 pairs of 50 kilowatts to make sure that we actually guessed right with the model. As much as we like to rely on the data, there still needs to be some tests in real world. But every time we're installing it, we're sizing up the utility connection to expand to either more units or upsize the speed depending upon the demand for it.
My guess is that it's a component system, which means you can upgrade it anytime you like.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have one other comment. It's just a interesting thought that came to my mind. Have you guys ever thought that you might become regulated by public utilities?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and that's, I mean, and that's the whole thing about why we
As
do
this
what we do.
expands, we're gonna get bigger and bigger, more and more places.
Well, and that's the whole thing. And because it's critical infrastructure, maybe it does become regulated. And yeah, there's just not great margins in reselling electricity, and there shouldn't be. You shouldn't be making, tons and tons of money and 100% margin on, critical infrastructure.
Which is why the advertising component is.
Exactly. And what's really cool, if you think about the advertising, and if we can influence behavior, it becomes e-commerce, it becomes its entire ecosystem, and it creates the best user experience. And that's sort of what drives us.
Any other commissioners have any comments?
I have a question about the needed maintenance on these kiosks. Is there a scheduled maintenance, and do you get notification if one of them is down?
Yep. We do get notifications if one of them are down because they're all connected and we monitor them 24/7. Contractually, we're obligated to come out at least once a quarter and inspect them in person. It generally happens more than that just because.
Okay, thank
A lot
you.
of those- Go ahead, Diane, I'm sorry.
No, I said, okay, thank you.
How often does the graphics change or the advertising change
The
typically?
maximum it would change is every 8 seconds. I'd call it every, 16 to 24 seconds because I don't expect.
Okay, so it's changing. So we have
Yeah.
50 advertisers.
Yeah.
For example, it's changing every 8 seconds.
Yes.
When does that refresh? Is that a month period, 6 months, a year?
Great question. I'd say on average, we'll call it 2 to 3 weeks and that's just off the cuff. The answer is it can be as little as a day. And we actually did that specifically to see if local business wanted to use it and if it was beneficial. So they don't have to pay,
Right. Test market. so to
exactly.
speak. Yeah. Thank you. Anyone else at this
Chairman.
point? Go ahead, Starley.
For the record, I am recusing myself from voting on this matter.
On this one, yes.
Well,
You still can comment. Go ahead.
Yeah, no comments right now. It was good information listening in.
Thank you, Starley. Marty,
Yeah,
Go
yeah,
ahead,
great.
Jen.
Yeah, I got a comment. This kiosk is going to be sitting on a piece of land or property of the property owner,
Yes.
a parking space that is strictly for electric cars. Are you leasing this space from the property owner, and at what amount are you leasing it? Just the space for the kiosk or the parking space also?
I can't comment on individual deal structures. I will say it's typical for us to lease this space from the property owner. So yes, and that's what we need to do to get the model done. And that's pretty common practice in the EV charging
Okay,
industry.
are you leasing just where the kiosk goes, or are you leasing the parking space also?
It's a great question. We'll call it the parking space for this discussion. That's really how they're thinking about it from a monetary standpoint.
How often do you put this adjacent to, for example, a handicap space, if at all?
Actually, I'd say we do it a decent amount because you run into a lot of the prime parking spots are next to ADA stalls in the front. And to be perfectly honest, this is the only charging model that I've seen that allows us to sort of build infrastructure that would service ADA spots. So I like putting them within reach of ADA spots. Yeah.
Thank you. Marty, you have a memo?
I do. Do you want me to just, Counselor, you want me to just read my memo in, or do you want to say something first?
I think that's appropriate at this point. Our proposed amendments really just kind of carve out this accessory codependent advertising, if you will, because it's not contemplated in the current zoning regulations. And, moving forward, there's a need for this kind of infrastructure, and there's only going to be more of it to come. So yeah, I think it's appropriate for you to read the memo. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I wrote a memo to the commission dated November 16th. Attorney Kristen Motel has filed an application to amend the zoning regulations, section 515.2, 515.5B, and 515.6B on behalf of her client, Volta Charging LLC. Her client would like to install 2 electric vehicle EV charging displays at Stop and Shop at 931 Torringford Street. Volta operates EV charging stations for free, but generates income through sponsored content on their digital display kiosk. Because these kiosks use electronic messaging and contain off-premises advertising, text amendments to the zoning regulations are required in order for these EV stations to be approved. The Assistant Planner, Zoning Enforcement Officer Jeremy Lyford, AICP, and I worked with the applicant regarding the text amendments proposed. We suggested that these charging stations containing off-site advertising and electric messaging displays be permitted only in the LB local business zone by special exception. We suggested the applicant limit the number of charging stations, size, contain auto dimming, and limit the refresh rates on the kiosk screens. We also wanted them located close to the stores and limit close to the stores. The screens not be visible from the streets and be located within larger parking lots. Our suggestions have been incorporated in the proposed text amendments to section 515.2, 515.5B, and 515.6B, which is attached to my memo. In addition, Attorney Motel has in her petition indicated how the proposed amendments are supported by the 2019 Torrington Plan of Conservation and Development. Specifically, she cites enhancing sustainability initiatives and promoting business growth. Assistant City Planner Jeremy Lyford and I are both supportive of the proposed amendments. We received no comments from other city staff in City Hall. The proposed amendments were referred to the Northwest Hills Council of Governments, who had no comments on the proposed text amendments. Because these proposed electric vehicle charging display kiosks will require special permit / site plan approval, we are confident they can be safely located on larger properties in the local business zone parking lots so that they won't interfere with traffic safety. We also agree that the proposed amendments to the zoning regs are not in conflict with the Plan of Conservation and Development. I recommend adoption of the proposed text amendments with an adoption effective date, the day after the date of publication of approval. There's only one thing in Exhibit A that was attached to my memo. And I did talk with the attorney prior to tonight's meeting. You'll notice that the EV charging display kiosks have the letter S in table 1. It should be E for a special exception. And she's agreed to that.
Yes.
Otherwise, we think that it's a strong amendment to our regs.
Any commissioners have any comments to Marty's memo?
No.
I'll go to the audience. Would anyone like to speak in favor of this application? Please come forward and state your name and address for the record. Being none, would anyone like to speak in opposition of this application? Please come forward and state your name and address for the record. And the same with those folks on Zoom, please. Does the applicant have anything to add or sum up at this point?
Thank you for the consideration.
Pardon me? Yep.
Thank you for the consideration.
Just one quick tidbit too. Great concept that I see you doing here. Just what comes to mind is an ATM machine that there was a kind of like a splash of that in the past. You want to put an ATM machine in, Johnny's Food Mart. Do you see that as an entity that may be coming forth that, kind of an excuse the expression, the gypsies are coming in and, I'm going to give you a similar type machine to put here, no bells and whistles, so to speak.
Here's the thing, and this is why the consulting business is starting to become interesting. You have to understand what's opportunistic in what's essential charging infrastructure. You're not going to be able to reduce the unit cost to be able to do what you're implying and just put one on every street corner and throw up some gas station TV. Like, it's just not going to work, because you're not going to be able to generate enough ad revenue, and you're not going to be able to charge somebody for this kind of free, slower charging, right? I'm willing to pay at that Tesla supercharger because I have to get here. I'm not going to go out of my way to pay a premium when I can go home and plug in. And it's really important to understand and think about that as you're starting to approach, how do I even enable EV adoption, especially in jurisdictions? So it's another thing about this model. It's what encourages EV adoption and what's critical infrastructure. What we're proposing now very much encourages EV adoption. Next, hopefully the next time we come in front of you, it's actually for fast chargers, which is going to be critical infrastructure.
Thank you very much.
And you're probably gonna have a mix of those, aren't you? I mean, you're never gonna give up on the slow chargers.
No, we're not.
I would expect to go to Stop and Shop and have some slow chargers and then some fast chargers as well.
So right now we have a recommendation engine, and it is interesting because it really comes down to the mix of how many people locally are going to use it and how many EVs are in the area. Because as long as it's being used and plugged in, like, that's good. It's good for our ethos. It's good for our company. But then how much are you actually going to be able to attract essential charging off of like corridor routes? And we're actively talking about it and figuring it out right now. And I'll give you an example. So this is going to go before the town board in summer soon. But in Putnam Plaza, it's a local property owner based in Connecticut we do a lot of work with. And we ended up doing 2 slow chargers and 2 fast chargers. And the idea was there's 2 relatively near the local businesses in the grocery store, and then there's 2 fast chargers that we think is going to end up being critical infrastructure for people traveling along the corridor. So you're exactly right.
What's the typical charging fee?
Like I
Is there
said,
a generalized,
it's somewhere between 30 and 50 cents in like the tri-state area per kilowatt.
Okay.
I know we're going to come under because that's our entire thesis, but I just don't know where the pricing is going to end up exactly yet because it varies so much on the utility bill.
Thank you. Any other commissioners have any comments? All right, the time is 8:01. I declare this public hearing closed, and we'll make a motion. Donna?
I'd like to make a motion to approve proposed change in zoning regulations, applicant Volta Charging LLC, care of Samuel Lee. Proposed amendment to sections 5.15.2, 5.15.5B, and 5.15.6B. The effective date of the regulation change amendment shall be the day after publication of the legal notice of decision in the local newspaper.
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Good luck.
Thank you.
All right, the time is 8:02. Moving on to agenda item number 4C, proposed amendments to Torrington zoning regulations. Applicant Torrington Planning and Zoning Commission. Proposal number 1, replace addendum wireless communication facilities with new section wireless communication facilities. 2, amendments to section 5.1 accessory apartments per CTPA 21-29. Serving on the commission this evening, excuse me, Starley Arias, Diane Carroll, Jim Babinski, remotely, Donna Greco, Greg Persino, myself, Greg Mealy in person, and also in attendance is our city planner, Martin Connor. Commissioner Greco, do you have a legal notice, please?
I do. The Planning and Zoning Commission has scheduled a public hearing on the following application on Wednesday, November 17th, 2021, in the City Hall Auditorium, room 218, 140 Main Street, Torrington, Connecticut. C, proposed change to Torrington zoning regulations. Applicant Torrington Planning and Zoning Commission. Proposal, replace addendum wireless communication facilities with new section wireless communication facilities. 2, amendments to section 5.1 accessory apartments per Connecticut PA CTPA 21-29. Time of hearing immediately following the close of the second public hearing.
Thank you, Commissioner Greco. Marty, you have a handful of items here,
Yeah,
since we're
actually,
representing ourselves.
right. Number one, I'm gonna ask Jeremy to review this with the commission, and he's written a memo summarizing the proposed changes, but he worked very hard on this, this amendment to our, what we painfully remember as our cell tower regulations.
Mhm.
Those of you that sat through those public hearings. will
Thank God
remember.
the state took them home.
It was
Yeah.
fun.
Anyway, Jeremy, can you go ahead with it?
Yep. Thank you, commissioners. For the record, Jeremy Lyford, Assistant Planner. I'll just read my memo into the record. So dated November 17th, 2021. Attached are copies of proposed comprehensive regulation amendments to regulations related to wireless communication facilities for review by the Planning and Zoning Commission. The reason for these proposed amendments is twofold. The first is to review, modernize, and clean up the regulations which have not been amended since 1998, due mainly to changes in technology. The second is to update the regulation for 5G small cell deployment, which is a priority for infrastructure upgrades at both the state and national level. Below is a brief summary and highlights of the proposed amendments. Number one is a general rewrite of section 1.0, the statement of purpose. Number two is cleanups and additions to definitions in section 2.0 to account for changing technology. Number three is a rewrite of section 3.1 to modernize exempt projects. For example, limit exemptions of amateur radio towers to 30 feet or less in height, and then review those taller than 30 feet in height by site plan approval. Number four, add new section on the use of outside experts by the city for application reviews, and that is new section A 3.5. Number five, add new language in section 4.1.2 on preferred locations for new facilities. Number six, add new language in section 4.1.4 on standards for review of proposed facility setbacks and siting. Number seven, new language added in section 4.2 for screening and buffering standards. Number eight, new language added in section 4.3 for noise control standards. Number nine, cleanup of language in sections 6.0 through 6.3 on application filing requirements and site plan requirements. Number 10, addition of site lighting standards in section 6.4.6. And number 11, added new language to section 6.5 on RFR reporting requirements. These changes are generally supported in new laws and regulations adopted at both the state and federal level, as well as the Torrington Plan of Conservation and Development, section 11, utilities. The proposal also incorporates elements of the POCD from section 4, protected, threatened, and endangered species, and section 6, protect scenic resources. So I distributed, or I think Lona distributed a tracked version of this, and it is pretty busy, but I tried to summarize it as best as I could in this memo. I don't know if there was any specific questions that I can answer, but it was pretty much an overhaul of a rewrite, and I used a couple of different sources for this. One was a federal recommendations on model regulations, but the big one I used was I don't know if some people may have heard of there's a big report that came out last year from WestCog, the Council of Governments around the Danbury area. They did a very, very long report with a pretty detailed study and recommended language for towns and cities in the state, particularly in the state, to use to rewrite these regulations. I would have to send it electronically because it's about 165 pages, but that was mostly what I used for the rewrite. And I also, actually, I should probably include both of these in the the other item that I'm just submitting for the record was the bill that was passed a couple years ago on the state's version of deployment of 5G wireless. So it's very, it's a very, very highly supported, movement at the state and federal level. So we're also looking at in discussions with the Public Works and Engineering Department on a corresponding licensing procedure for these small wireless facilities on city property, which would sort of dovetail with with these regulation amendments. So these would govern anything not covered by the siting council or on, well, I think depending on who the applicant is on city property as well.
Any commissioners have any comments or questions? Jeremy?
So
No.
these have you rewritten them yet, or you're in the process of?
No, he has rewritten them.
Okay.
It's all, and we posted them online. We've sent them to the Northwest Hills Council of Governments, and they had no comments on it. And Jeremy, like he had indicated, you attended that special seminar that they put on
I did.
to explain this. So he's our resident expert.
Westcog was very thorough. It's a fairly large report. If anybody wants to see a copy of it, I only submitted the front couple pages just to be sure that we had something in the file for it. But in the one that was distributed, I don't know if you actually got the color printed version, but I've tracked the strikeouts and underlined the add-ins. So there was a lot of amendments in the document. So that memo that I wrote was just the high level highlights.
Right.
All right, we have the amendments to section 5.1 accessory apartments per CTPA 21-29.
Yes, that one is one that I have authored those particular changes. I wrote a memo to the commission on those proposed changes dated November 2nd. The Connecticut General Assembly passed PA 21-29 on June 10th, 2021, which includes provisions effective January 1st, 2022 regarding accessory apartments, commonly referred to as ADUs. These changes will override any conflicts with our existing zoning regulations regarding accessory apartments unless both the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council hold public hearings to opt out of these provisions and approve the opt-out provision with a 2/3 majority in each body. I would recommend that the commission revise section 5.1 of our zoning regulations on accessory apartments to comply with the provisions of PA 21-29 and not opt out. I think accessory apartments offer a great way to improve Torrington's housing stock. Below are the amendments required to bring our zoning regulations into compliance with the new state requirements. So what I did is I took section 5.1 and the definition 2.2, and I, as you can see, I have a strikeout, and then I've replaced it with language that conforms to the state statute. So in our specific terms and our definitions, I struck out what we had for accessory apartment, a dwelling unit which is smaller and secondary in nature to the principal dwelling unit and is contained within the same building as the principal dwelling unit, and replace that with the definition below, which is accessory apartment means a separate dwelling unit that A, is located on the same lot as the principal dwelling unit of greater square footage, B, has cooking facilities, and C, complies with or is otherwise exempt from any applicable building codes, fire code, and health and safety regulations. So that is right from the definition that's contained within the state statute. Section 5.1, accessory apartments are permitted in all zones that allow a single-family detached dwelling, provided all of the following conditions are met. So I'm suggesting we strike out 5.1 because that that says in the R15S and R10S zoning districts, a special exception must be obtained for an accessory apartment. 5.1.2, I'm suggesting that we strike out has and habitable so that and a maximum habitable floor area of 700 square feet. So we can comply with the statute, which will then make it say the accessory apartment shall have a minimum net floor area of 400 square feet and a maximum net floor area of not less than 30% of the net floor area of the principal dwelling or 1,000 square feet, whichever is less. Section 5.1.3 would get crossed out, and we'd have a new 5.1.3 that would say the accessory apartment is attached to or located within the proposed or existing principal dwelling or detached from the proposed or existing principal dwelling and located on the same lot as such dwelling. And 5.1.5 would be struck out. A new 5.1.4 would say only one accessory apartment and one principal dwelling unit are permitted on a lot. 5.1.6 and 5.1.7 would be crossed out. In 5.1.5, the accessory apartment shall conform to all front, side, and rear yard setbacks applicable to a single-family dwelling unit. 5.1.6 would be a new section. 5.1.9 struck out. One parking space is required on the property for the accessory apartment. And 5.7.4 would be a strikeout. And then I just included the exact language on accessory apartments contained in the bill, which I used as a model for revising our regulations.
This is really a form of affordable housing, isn't it?
It's a way to create additional affordable housing without having to deed restrict it.
Right.
It's just a common sense way, really, of allowing for.
So it's being allowed in every single family zone.
Right,
There's no special exception.
right. No special exception. That's the main change. And then the sizing. We used to have, it had to be between 400 and 700.
Hmm.
This allows it to be up to 1,000.
700 max. Correct.
Right. So
They
I
did
think
that.
that's more reasonable because
They
we
did.
were always, playing with eliminating like a closet and, trying to figure it out to make it work.
There is a percentage too. It's 1,000 or was it 40%?
I think it was
30%, yeah,
30,000
whichever
max.
small.
1,000 max, 30%, 1,000 max. Cape Cod did that. They had limited success.
Well, I think we stole that,
Yeah,
Massachusetts,
okay.
pretty much.
Yeah.
So I think it's a common sense way. It really isn't a great change other than not requiring the special exception.
Artie, just a comment on 5.1.5. The accessory apartment shall conform to all front, side, and rear yard setbacks applicable to a single-family dwelling. my thought is, what do you do with a pre-existing building that's already there that does not meet the setbacks? Is it allowable in that and maybe predate the approval on that, somebody's not building a non-conforming dwelling and change it into an accessory apartment?
Right.
Is there some way to maybe incorporate
Yeah,
that? Because I think there's properties out there that there's an outbuilding that would make the ideal.
Would make sense, yeah.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
what would happen if that happened today? And let's say you had this in place. Somebody came in and they wanted to do an accessory apartment, but they didn't meet the setback.
They wouldn't be allowed to if that accessory building,
I mean, you're not.
No, what I'm saying
You're
is-
saying it might be grandfathered because of the fact that the guy's already out of conformance.
Right, here's my house. I have an outbuilding over there that's 5 feet from the property line. It's supposed to be 15 feet.
Right.
It's already pre-existing non-conforming.
Right.
What's the
where
difference if it
the
goes in or not?
example is a garage, like on one of our lots, say it's a 40,000 square foot lot or even less.
Hmm.
And it was built 10 feet away.
Hmm.
It meets all the zoning setbacks,
For the
but
garage.
now it can't,
Right,
you can't take that upper story and make it into an apartment.
right.
You couldn't under our current regs, you can under these, but after talking with Greg and Jeremy and I speaking, what we could do is say, except for accessory apartments or except for accessory buildings
Pre-existing.
that exist prior to the date of the adoption of this regulation.
I think that's wise.
I have a couple of direct enforcement issues that deal with this very thing.
Right now, probably,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, I don't
So
know,
if this
do
was
we really-
spelled out that way, some of those may go away.
We could have them come in for a,
What would be the benefit of allowing?
It's already pre-existing.
Right, but it isn't an apartment. It's just an accessory, right? Now you want to use it as an apartment. So the question I'm asking is, what's the justification? I mean, why would you say, let's allow that?
You already have a building that's there.
I know, but it's not a living building. You don't live in it. It's not an accessory
Well,
apartment.
that's the rub for why it's currently written that way, so.
I grant you that, but I'm still looking for, why would we want to make that change and say, well, here's a existing accessory building that is non-conforming. If we try
Well,
to
it would
make,
be
it's
conforming.
conforming, but it'll be
Yeah.
not conforming if we make it an
Yeah,
accessory
for
apartment.
residential.
So the question is, why are we willing to allow that when someone else will come in and say, I want to put up a building? Okay, well, you've got to go with the setbacks that are required for.
Well, I think the language would be is shall conform to all front, side, and rear yard setbacks applicable to a single-family dwelling, except where the building is pre-existing / non-conforming
with respect to setbacks.
with as of prior to this date of adoption of.
Yeah, I'm not really doing that.
Well,
That's fine.
maybe,
Just
I
wanna
could,
discuss it.
the reason I bring up, I mean, I don't know, there could be all kinds of situations, but say that guy has there's an accessory building, maybe it's a shed, maybe it's a garage, whatever. And it's 10 feet off boundary of this yard. Now you're gonna allow it in a reg to go ahead and be converted into a accessory apartment, well, that's now a living space, which means there'll be activity and things on a regular basis, not something that,
Instead of driving your race car in and out.
well, yeah, let's just say like the shed or something like that. I don't know, I'm having trouble with
No, I
that.
think
that's a good point.
Right, yeah.
Well, why don't you go with this for now?
Yeah.
And see
Sure.
whether those situations come up enough so that it's worth looking back
Sure.
and making a change.
Right.
But this will at least bring
Yeah, this
us
is
up,
kind of boilerplate.
this brings us up to par with what the statute says.
I can give commissioners a couple examples, and if you're out and about, you can take a look at these and see what you think about them.
Okay,
So what if they meet all the regulations with setbacks, side yards, but
That's quite
don't
right.
have a parking space?
Well, they have to have a parking space to add an accessory apartment.
Okay,
Yeah, they have to have
not
one.
the front lawn?
They have to have one, yeah. And
Plenty of that going on.
that
too.
was a big thing because,
No,
I mean, you're
I-
saying in
I-
jest.
that
Dot,
drives
but-
me
yeah.
insane.
no,
Yeah.
it's true, yeah.
but this was a big thing because in Fairfield County, to block accessory apartments, they had excessive parking regulations and stuff.
Need 10.
So that's why that one parking space is in there.
Okay. I think it's legitimate to have one. I mean, personally, I mean, if it's less than 1,000 square foot space, probably only one person will live there anyway.
Well, I think that may change too.
Well, at least for a minimum, you have to have one,
Right.
which is
That's-
reasonable.
I get it. That's good. All right. That's fine.
Thank you, Marty. Do any commissioners have any other comments or questions
No.
on Marty's changes here?
Nope.
Being none, I'll go to the public. Would anyone like to speak in favor of this application? Being none, would anyone like to speak in opposition of this application? No. All right, Marty, the time is 8:24. I declare this public hearing closed, and we will make a decision as soon as Commissioner Greco reads it.
I'd like to make a motion to approve proposed amendments to Torrington zoning regulations, applicant Torrington Planning and Zoning Commission. Proposal replace addendum wireless communication facilities with new section wireless communication facilities. 2 amendments to section 5.1 accessory apartments per CTPA 21-29. The effective date of the regulation change / amendment shall be the day after publication of the legal notice of decision in the local newspaper.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Thank you. All right, moving on to agenda item number 5, old business. The time is 8:25. A, special exception 21-09 and site plan 1378. Applicant is Alum Realty, Inc. Location 861 New Harrington Road. Proposal gasoline sales. Install gasoline dispensers, canopy, parking, and landscaping, building facade modifications. Public hearing is closed on 10/13/21. Just for the record, the public hearing is closed. It'll be commissioners only. And the city planner in conversation, no other input from the public, please. Thank you. Marty, I believe you have a memo. I
did
think
write a
probably, let's get going with that and then we'll have some discussion, please.
I wrote a memo that was dated October 27th, 2021. It says Alam Realty, Inc. has filed a special exception and site plan application to add gasoline dispensers, canopy, storm drainage, parking, and modifications to the building facade at Sam's Mart, 861 New Harwinton Road. The current use of the property is a retail convenience store. The proposed gasoline station is a special exception use in the LB zone per sections 3.1 subsection 840 of the zoning regs. A public hearing was opened and closed at the October 13th, 2021 Planning and Zoning meeting. Plans presented at the public hearing were titled Modifications and Improvements to Sam's Mart, 861 New Harwinton Road, Connecticut Road 4, Torrington, Connecticut, by Jason Dismukes Consulting Engineers, dated 6/21/21, revised through 10/11/21, sheets C1 through C9, EX1 through 2, and P1 through P4. The revised site plan substantially changes the driveway entrances on New Harwinton Road and Circle Drive. On Circle Drive, presently, the curb cut runs nearly the whole length of the property. 4 parking spaces exist where customers actually back into Circle Drive. Along New Harwinton Drive, the entrance is wide and located close to Circle Drive. The proposed plan narrows and moves the New Harwinton driveway entrance away from the intersection closer to the property line. The Circle Drive entrance is narrowed to 18 feet and parking spaces requiring backing out onto Circle Drive eliminated. Traffic will be one-way entrance only on New Harwinton Road and one-way exit only on Circle Drive. In reviewing the application and plans and documents and testimony received at the public hearing submitted, I have the following comments. Traffic and parking concerns raised. Traffic was the main concern voiced at the public hearing by commission members and neighbors. The applicant submitted a traffic report dated 9/13/21 by Scott F. Hesketh, PEFA, Hesketh and Associates, Inc. Mr. Hesketh, in his conclusion to his report, indicates based on the observed background traffic volumes, the projected site traffic volumes and analysis as outlined in this report, it is our professional opinion that the traffic volumes associated with the addition of 2 pumps with 4 fueling positions to the existing Sam's Convenience Market can be readily accommodated by the existing roadway network without causing undue harm to the traveling public. The site access driveways are properly located and designed to accommodate the anticipated driveway volumes. The narrowing of Circle Drive access and the elimination of the 4 parking spaces fronting Circle Drive will result in an improved access to local roadways. Sergeant Baldus, Police Traffic Unit, in an updated email memo to me dated 9/30/21 indicated, I have to say I'm still apprehensive about this plan. The one-way will direct traffic flow onto Circle Drive, including the off-hour trailers for gas drop-off or inventory. The swing back into Circle Drive appears to be very tight and does not consider any roadway changes such as snow during the winter months. The citizens have a right to be concerned with residential neighborhood exit for all customers of SanMart. You can put out statistics of anticipated numbers, but unless the pumps are in place as of right now, the patrons have an option to pull in and out of the separate driveway or Circle Drive. This is unfortunately the best design plan to accommodate what SanSmart plans to do, but have reservations about the future of Circle Drive intersection and impact on pulling out. The grade of the intersection, according to the stats, does drop with the change in the traffic flow and makes an average intersection go to being at risk of an unstable flow with possible congestion. These are my comments and concerns to the plans put forth. The testimony at the public hearing from neighbors and several commission members questioned the conclusions of the Hesketh traffic report and his testimony. Concerns were raised regarding the one-way in and one-way out driveway configuration, increased traffic generated by the gasoline station use, limited on-site parking, delivery truck traffic, limited area for site snow storage in the winter, sightline concerns, and school bus traffic in the area. A petition was submitted, signed by 68 Circle Drive residents, citing their opposition to the project out of their concern for health, safety, and welfare and safety of their neighbors, who they feel are at risk every time they try to exit Circle Drive onto New Harwinton Road. During the public hearing, staff voiced concerns that customers living on Circle Drive will disregard the exit-only signs on Circle Drive exit and pull into the site from Circle Drive. This site is very tight with very minimal amount of parking spaces required, including tandem parking for 2 employees and limited parking for delivery vehicles. Also, it was pointed out there is limited stacking space for vehicles waiting to use the pumps. Mountable curbs and scored pavement are required to accommodate truck deliveries and tight driveway entries and exits proposed. In making a decision on the special exception use proposed, the commission should refer to section 8.2.2 A through C. I believe the following sections in the 8.2.2 general standards are relevant to the commission's review of this project and testimony that was received at the public hearing. 8.2.2 B1, the site plan shall provide for a site design which is in harmony with the neighborhood, accomplishes a transition in character between areas of unlike character, protects property values, preserves and enhances the appearance and beauty of the community, and provides a harmonious relationship between existing and proposed buildings in the vicinity, specifically with regard to the visual relationship in terms of scale, proportions, and particularly the historic significance of the existing buildings. 8.2.2B2, traffic. Vehicular and pedestrian traffic projected as a result of the use vehicular pedestrian traffic circulation, including traffic to and from and in the vicinity of the use, will not be hazardous or detrimental to the character of the zone or the neighborhood. In making its determination with respect to this criteria, the commission shall consider the proposed location, the size and layout of the special exception use, its nature and intensity of operations involved, and its relation to the local streets providing access to the site and adequacy of the proposed traffic flow controls and emergency access. The commission shall give due consideration to any recommendations by the city engineer regarding the adequacy of any public road proposed to be used for access. 8.2.2B4, parking. The commission shall consider the impact of parking location, number of spaces, and design on adjoining properties. 8.2.2B8, provisions for signs, if any, and proposed exterior lighting with reference to glare, traffic safety, compatibility, in harmony with adjacent properties in the neighborhood. 8.2.2C4, the capacity, safety, and condition of the surrounding streets to accommodate traffic generated by the proposal. 8.2.2C8, the impacts proposal site development, including parking lots, stormwater management, exterior lighting, landscaping, views, open space, and signs would have on surrounding properties. The commission might consider the following reasons for denial of the special exception in site plan application based on the plans, documents, and testimony received at the public hearing 10/13/21. The commission finds that the site plan and site design is not in harmony with the neighborhood, does not protect property values, does not preserve and enhance the appearance and beauty of the community, and does not provide for harmonious relationship between existing and proposed residences in the vicinity. 2, the commission finds the vehicular and pedestrian traffic projected as a result of the gas station use, the vehicular and pedestrian traffic circulation resulting on site, including traffic to and from the vicinity of the use, will be hazardous or detrimental to the character of the neighborhood. 3, the commission finds the impact of the proposed parking location, number of spaces, and design is inadequate for the proposed uses and will impact negatively on adjoining properties. 4, no information was submitted on the proposed lighting for the gasoline station. Therefore, the commission was unable to evaluate the impact that the gasoline station lighting may have on surrounding properties. Should the commission decide that the application does meet the general and specific standards for special exception approval, I would recommend the following conditions of approval. 1, a lighting plan in conformance with section 5.17 and 8.43H of the zoning regs shall be submitted to the city planner for review and approval. 2, a bond estimate prepared by the project engineer shall be submitted for the cost and installation of maintenance of the soil and erosion sedimentation controls as shown on the approved plans. A performance bond in an amount approved by the city planner's office and in a form acceptable to corporation council should be submitted prior to issuance of a zoning permit to cover estimated cost of E&S measures. 3, a stormwater management best management practices maintenance agreement with the city of Torrington shall be filed on the Torrington land records per section 7.4.2D of the regulations should the application be approved. And 4, all gas station deliveries shall be made when the gas station and convenience store is closed.
Thank you, Marty. Any commissioners have any comments?
I mean, I'm having a real hard time with the site plan. I just don't think it works. It's just too compressed or too tight. And, you know, and we've looked at similar applications in the past where stacking creates problems on major roads. And I think that the neighborhood would have to contend with a somewhat of a decreased service regarding, you know, how they get in and out of their, you know, Circle Drive.
Right.
And I don't know. I can't imagine how it can actually be a successful site, because if it's that much of a problem to get in and out of, and it creates somewhat of a friction, I would imagine that people will opt to go other places rather than try to get into that space.
Right.
I agree with the police officer.
Right.
That's my view.
Yeah, let me throw my 2 cents in here. I totally agree with Greg. I've driven by there a couple times the last couple weeks, and I think the stacking on Circle Drive, the people coming out one way, I think that's a problem. I don't think it's good that people that are coming from Circle Drive have to go back out to New Harwinton Avenue to get back into the gas station or Sam's just to get gas. They can't even go back in because I guess it's a one-way out. It's extremely tight. I don't think it really works. That's my opinion.
I agree.
Thank you, Jim Babinski. Donna Greco, go ahead.
Yes, I agree that the space is way too tight, and it's just the speed of the cars that travel in that area will lend itself to, I think, more problems than, you know, anybody anticipates. And I think it would be, you know, very inconvenient for the Circle Drive residents, you know, to have to do that. And
Well, you had over 60% of the population in that neighborhood signing the petition in opposition,
Right.
which is
huge.
carries a lot of weight in my
Right.
estimation. You know, the public has spoken out about their concerns and the safety, and, you know, to touch upon Marty's components, it was not in harmony with the neighborhood. And I think the traffic itself is going to be a real issue there.
Right.
The parking, you know, people are going to take shortcuts to possibly jump into the station and back out. I think it's too tight.
And, you know, and they still do appreciate his business as it is now, but they just, you know, they couldn't lend their support to, you know, a non-harmonious, dangerous situation, I think.
Yeah. Any other commissioners have any comments?
This is
Diane?
Diane Carroll. My comment is, as I had noted at the last month's meeting, one of my main concerns, other than it being very congested, is congested in nice weather. In the wintertime, it's going to be very congested with snow banks and so on and so forth. So
Right.
I don't think it's going to be a right fit there either.
Thank you, Diane. Marty, you have any other comments?
No.
Okay. I think we're ready to make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to deny special exception 21-09 and site plan 1378. Applicant Alum Realty, Inc. Location 861 New Harwinton Road. Proposal gasoline sales, install gasoline dispensers, canopy, parking, and landscaping, building facade modifications. 1, the commission finds that the site plan and site design is not in harmony with the neighborhood, does not protect property values, does not preserve and enhance the appearance and beauty of the community, and does not provide for a harmonious relationship between existing and proposed residences in the vicinity. 2, the commission finds that the vehicular and pedestrian traffic projected as a result of the gasoline station use, the vehicular and pedestrian traffic circulation resulting on site, including traffic to and from and in the vicinity of the use, will be hazardous or detrimental to the character of the neighborhood. 3, the commission finds that the impact of the proposed parking location number of spaces, and design is inadequate for the proposed uses and will impact negatively on adjoining properties. 4, no information was submitted on the proposed lighting for the gasoline station. Therefore, the commission was unable to evaluate the impact that the gasoline station lighting may have on surrounding properties.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Moving on to agenda item number 6A. This is going to be a re-subdivision. The applicant is Charles R. Eversole Jr., location 31 Pumping Station Road. Proposals for a 3-lot re-subdivision. We need to set a public hearing. The suggested date is December 8th, 2021. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second, please?
Second.
From Commissioner Greco. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Moving on to agenda item number 6B, special exception 21-10, applicant AJK LLC. Excuse me, location 637 to 659 Winston Road, assessor map 236, block 001, lots 010, 011, and assessor map 236, block 001, lot 009. Proposal is renewal of earth excavation permit. We need to set a public hearing date. The suggested date is December 8th, 2021. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Diane Carroll, second.
Thank you, Diane. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Moving on to agenda item number 6C, zoning and blight violation update. I know we have a couple of documents. Ashley has supplied a memorandum.
Might want to just for the heck of it, look at,
Excuse me.
did she on the second page? Look at the summary of what has been accomplished with our
Right.
blight officer. I think that,
Yeah, active enforcement cases 57, cases sent to Corporation Council 7, cases scheduled for hearing 0. Cases brought into compliance since January 2021, 31, 122 since 2019. Liens and fine collected in 2021, 109,550. Not including 2 houses the city now owns. You know what? Kudos to
Yes.
all you folks in the planning and zoning department and the and Ashley,
yeah, she
and
does
the
a,
blight enforcement.
I
she
think
has a
that
tough job. She
Yeah.
works hard.
Right.
She's getting
Jeremy
good, she's-
supervises.
you guys are getting good support from corporate council and the mayor too.
And she does it on 12 and a half hours a week with us.
Yeah.
Really?
It's a full-time job
Yeah.
and hopefully we can encourage the mayor and city council to upgrade it because it certainly pays for itself.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So, any other comments on that?
No.
No. All righty. Moving on to agenda item number 7, correspondence. A discussion about new cannabis establishments regulations.
So just to let you know, the City Council Ordinance Commission hopes to bring forward a new ordinance regarding smoking marijuana and cigarettes in public spaces. And they're hoping to adopt it. Jeremy, did the mayor say it was like January 9th or something? like that?
Yeah, it was the first January meeting.
Yeah,
that they
their
have.
first city council meeting,
Yeah.
they're hoping. So that would take care of a lot of issues I think people might have about smoking marijuana in public and particularly too in outdoor restaurant patio areas.
It's common sense.
Right, but that'll separate that. So then, what we are proposing to do is have a joint meeting with, after that ordinance has been taken care of, probably towards the end of January, a joint meeting with the Planning and Zoning Commission, the City Council, and the Board of Public Safety to discuss the retail and then we also need to discuss, which I think is a much lesser problem, would be the production of cannabis, in, our industrial centers or whatever. I will say that the town of Thomaston has directed their town planner to write up a ordinance, or not an ordinance, a zoning regulation to allow the retail sales in Thomaston. And also Winstead has been looking at it too. So,
Woodbury shot it down.
yeah, the small towns are shooting it down, but
Enfield shut it down.
Did they?
Enfield opt that out.
And wasn't it Wolf Pit or one of those areas down there?
I'm
I mean, it
leaning,
doesn't matter. I mean, the reality of it is there'll be places people will be able to go and buy it. So I think it's silly for us to. not
Well-
do it.
Well, that was
Our
part of it.
regulations should just be common sense, good regulations.
Right.
I would, I took a look at the only one of the few regulations that's already in effect is Middletown.
Mhm.
And they basically did it by special exception.
Mhm.
So that they, have to have a special exception, a site plan. And they have to have a public hearing, and they're able to evaluate the site, just like we evaluated that gas station tonight.
Mhm.
And the neighborhood input was, instrumental in your decision,
How
Yeah.
many, only one retail establishment in Torrington? will be
Well,
allowed?
what we'll get is we will get 2, plus I did confirm, well, I think it's confirmed in talking with one of the attorneys that was part of writing the regulation, that the existing medical marijuana facility would get a license too. So we could have, the hybrid and two retails. That would be the maximum that we'd have until
And the state,
2024 or something like
the
that.
state regulations or the state statutes, didn't they indicate that, or there was some discussion at least that the benefit, the business ownership benefit was supposed to be somewhat local.
Yeah, there's equity provisions,
Right.
and Torrington would qualify for some of that equity
Okay,
stuff too.
okay, good.
So, and, I think we could use the 3% rather
Absolutely.
than having Thomaston and Winstead getting all the sales. So,
Have they determined where that 3% is going? To what coffers? by chance?
yes, there is some strings attached. So it has to go back to the community and,
Okay.
yeah.
Doesn't have to support rehab and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, so, but
Be more around.
there's enough, it can't just go strictly in the general fund.
No.
But there's enough of expenditures that we already have in the general fund, for that type.
Mhm.
That would offset.
So Jeremy will continue to monitor it, for you and,
Yep.
but I'm leaning, the more I read and see, to suggesting that you either do it as an overlay, like we did the medical, or just simplify it and do it by special exception in the local business zone only for retail sales.
There's only a maximum.
Right, maximum of 2 anyway.
So,
Right.
you'd have to
And you
decide
already know where one,
is.
where one is as far as the hybrid, and
Right.
we know there has been no problems there, so.
Yeah, we had to confirm because it was supposed to be every 25,000.
Right.
And we had to confirm that we got that second one
Mhm.
beyond the first 25, how they were interpreting that number.
So Jeremy and I confirmed that with a seminar we were on. We specifically asked that question of one of the attorneys that was part of, writing that.
So that joint meeting that you're talking, that'll be in the public forum like this? or-
Yeah.
No pun intended.
Yeah,
And I think because of holidays, we're working on the draft calendar for next year. I think because of the way holidays fall, we're later in the month for the regular, for this commission's regular meeting.
I mean, do you agree that you think that would be beneficial to have some public input as a whole, or if you don't want to pursue that, we don't have to?
I like it.
Yeah,
I think it's the right way to go. Let people have a voice.
right.
It's kind of an important, somewhat of a, glowing issue so that you give people an opportunity to speak. It's
Oh, and
good.
they will.
Yeah, they will,
They will.
and they should.
Very good.
Okay.
All right. Time is 8:53. Moving on to agenda item number 8, adjournment.
I'll move it.
So,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, so moved. Have a good one. Just FYI, I will not be here on the December 8th meeting. Vice Chair Greg Persino will take care of that.
And you will be overseeing the Christmas party.
Oh, yes.
and
He's leaving
I-
me his credit card.
I could do that.